There was an official story for that as well, but I don't know.
Interesting.
Again, just based on
they were better at
anecdotes.
that time, during that time of shutting down interviews. Like, reporters wouldn't push it, right?
They worked in conjunction
They
with the
worked in
government.
conjunction
They
with
were
the
good
government.
citizens. Good
They were
Americans.
like, okay, I'll stop reporting now. I won't take a serious, I won't listen to this. But that's not the case now. So
Because the media completely stays out of government affairs now.
yeah, completely.
Yeah. Well, anywho, that's an interesting story.
Yeah.
I like to, follow up with the fact that just because that's not real doesn't mean there's something going on in Antarctica.
Right.
I came across an awesome first-person story of a person who's highly credible, clearly knows what he's talking about, that goes into realistic stories of things that went down there. Everything from, I would say realistic, I would say paranormal or high strangeness that went down there. He was a pilot in Antarctica for about a decade who witnessed silver discs in the sky multiple times, a giant mysterious black hole right next to the South Pole, which was really interesting. And also, he was involved in an incident with a bunch of scientists went missing, and then he found them.
Wow.
We'll get to it right after the break.
Yes.
All right, Josh, tell us your stories.
Well, I came across something awesome in the deep bowels of the internet. So this story will help add maybe evidence, corroboration, or something to what Billy was saying in the interview. It's an interesting first-person account of crazy shit going down in I almost said Santa Monica, where I used to live. Crazy stuff going down.
Crazy shit is going
in
down in Santa
Antarctica.
Monica.
Yeah, it is. Damn. All right, here we go. So Linda Moulton Howe did an interview a couple years ago with a naval officer who witnessed multiple things as described. Discs, a crazy giant black hole, and missing scientists. All three stories are amazing in their own right.
Did this guy, is he legit? Did he give a name or did he remain anonymous?
He's kind of anonymous. So his name is Brian, in quotes, S. So his last name would be S. He's in his 60s, and he used to work for the Navy.
Let's just call him BS for now.
Let's call him BS. Down. Think of that. Good job. Nice. Dude, witty.
Okay, wait, before we go down
this
that
whole
path.
thing sucks now. No, this guy's legit.
Linda
Okay.
Moulton Howe only does legit interviews. For
Yeah.
real. I mean, she does most of the time. There's some interviews, I would say, of some people that I would not say are credible.
Yeah.
However, most of her stuff is she vets pretty highly. Just put that out
I
there.
agree. There's a lot of people who criticize her, and I see your face over there, Matt O'Connor. But overall, if you're in this space and you're looking for this type of stuff, every once in a while, you're going to get a couple people who are trick you into thinking you're telling the truth. So,
Right.
do you want to say something, Matt, before we go
No,
on?
I just said, look, she has done some amazing stuff before. Her work into the cattle mutilation stuff was like, I mean, it won some awards, right? It was like crazy good. So,
Yeah, but like because of that, she gets really prestigious interviews, and she always protects people. Like she's very like she says, "Let me do an interview with you, but I'll protect who you are." And she's very she never gives away her sources. She's a little bit like Watergate with Linda Moulton Howe.
All right, Linda Moulton Howe. You got three first names, it sounds like. All right.
I'm listening.
All right, fine. All right, here we go. This is going to be an awesome story. So this guy, Brian, worked on a crew that flew a C-130, a giant cargo kind of plane, around Antarctica. It transported cargo and passengers, a lot of scientists and crew. Everywhere they went, they go drop off scientists and food. They bring back trash. They did a lot of trash runs, too. All over Antarctica for like many years, in the 80s and the early 90s. This one's all takes place. This guy named was Brian, quotes, S. I'm not even sure if that's real.
BS, okay.
But the way, if you listen to I listened to this entire interview with this guy, and he clearly had that job. So the credibility that this guy actually worked for the Navy, flew down in Antarctica, and actually
so it's like an audio interview.
yeah, it's a
You can
long
listen to it.
2-hour audio interview where he really
Matt.
describes it almost annoyingly,
All right.
where he goes.
No, I'm on board.
He goes into details where you're almost bored. You're kind of like, okay, stop talking the pre-step, the checks you do before you fly off. Like, I don't care about your plane. Like, you know what I mean? He had so many details that it was beyond a reasonable doubt that's what he did.
Okay.
Right.
Whether he saw what I'm about to explain is a different story, but it's really, I think he's credible, and I think the whole thing is legit. And also, these stories are amazing, but they're on the edge of something so spectacular that it's hard to believe. It's not just like, I saw an ET alien with a chainsaw and a bikini, like chasing after pigs, like nothing like that happened.
What? That happened?
Classic tale, that one. Yeah.
I'm gullible. Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
So here we go. Dun, dun. So I'm not going to get into the silver disc stories. I'm just going to briefly do this. So he, on multiple occasions, saw multiple silver discs in the sky.
Okay.
In his flights, he went to South Pole about 300 times. And he from the coast and these different stations all around Antarctica. They're all over the place. He would fly to the middle. At multiple times, they witnessed as a crew, all of them, multiple silver discs in the sky. And they always seemed to sometimes it seemed like to track them for a long time, but they never broke a territorial line. which is interesting. So like they never get close, but they witnessed it multiple times. It was always obviously an exciting moment. All the crews used to talk about this, how they see things and weird things and other weird things all the time.
Over Antarctica.
All of this is in Antarctica. So the first story I want to talk about I call The Big Gap. This is really fascinating. So
Matt, don't not say anything.
No, I didn't say anything. I'm listening.
I was purposely trying to get a rise out of you. So the Big Gap.
All right.
This crew on the C-130 are flying a mission. They're flying between two parts in Antarctica, doing a mission. They get a call from whoever coordinates all this, and they're saying there's a critically injured person at the South Pole. You need to go get him. They're like, okay, let's go get him. And they immediately notice that there's a no-fly zone that they always had to fly around when they're doing normal missions near the South Pole, and they'll never go through it. But they realize if they go through it right now, they can get to this critically injured person like right away. So they decide as a crew, without really confirming with the base or whoever's in control, like, we're just going to cut through to get this guy. So they cut through. And when they're cutting through, it goes directly to the South Pole. And the reason why they can't fly over that place is because there was the no-fly zone was an air sampling station. That was the official excuse, an air sampling station. I don't even know what that means, but apparently if planes fly over it with their exhaust and fumes, it can mess up with their sampling.
Okay, so they're just kind of testing the
atmosphere.
Yeah, the toxins in the sky and all that sort of stuff. All
yeah,
right.
Science.
Cool.
So they fly over. So they fly over, and they notice there's no station. And they look down, and they're about 22,000 feet up, and the station's about 12,000 feet. The Antarctica is actually very high up, and most people don't realize that. And they look down, and there's no station there, but a giant football stadium-sized black hole that goes deep into the ground. And they're staring at it, and it looks like there's nothing around it necessarily, but what they noticed immediately was there were snow plows or snowcats, the ones that make the trails up in the Arctic, the ones that have those big wheels,
yeah, clearly
making a path from this giant hole to the South Pole station.
Okay.
Which is really bizarre. So they fly over it, and there's nothing else really they can tell other than it looks like you can kind of get into it, but there's no structure necessarily.
Is it like a man-made black hole?
They don't know, but there's supposed to be a station there above ground that doesn't look anything like a giant hole. This station's not supposed to be underground. So why would they say there's a station there? You can't fly over it, and they fly over it, there's no station, but a giant football field-wide hole. So they fly through, and they land at South Pole, get this critically injured person, and they fly out. The base who controls them says, hey, fly around it. What are you doing? Don't fly near that again. So they actually go around it and divert kind of, so they don't fly over it again.
So the first time they flew directly over the top of it? Is that what you're saying?
Like near it, like where they angle, they could see from their window down at it. They had a clear view of it. Right. On the way out, they were kind of flying close to it, and they couldn't really see it anymore, but the people who were controlling them said, get away. Yeah. So they land, they drop off the critical person. They're actually not thinking much of it. They're not like, well, that was weird, because there wasn't like ships coming out of it. There was nothing super bizarre. Yeah. So they land, and immediately two guys they've never seen before take them to a room, get them all in the room, and say, never talk about this again. You're not allowed to ever talk about this again. This didn't happen. You didn't see a giant gap in the ground.
Certainly didn't heed that warning, did he?
Right.
Wow.
Well, they never signed a non-disclosure. That's why he came forward about it. That's what he says. They never signed
And it was back
anything.
in the 80s, right?
Back in the 80s. And they were like, okay, we won't talk about it. We didn't really think anything weird's going on. So they after that incident, they kind of talked to other people who had other crews, and apparently a lot of people have seen other giant holes in the ground all around Antarctica.
Really?
Which is crazy. They only saw that one hole near South Pole, but apparently people have seen other holes all over the place. So that was one story that was interesting. I want to read a comment that I found below the
Before
YouTube.
you do, that kind of lines up with one of the things that was attributed to Admiral Byrd, saying that he believed that enemy ships could fly through the center of the Earth pole to pole, and that would be a really quick way of coming around a country and being able to attack. Was one of the crazy elements of his conspiracy story that he apparently said, but again was part of that whole...
No, who knows? It could be exactly that. Yeah. So I found an awesome, just before I go into the next story, which is really cool, I just found an awesome comment from someone on YouTube who watched this interview from Elena Seward, Seward. It goes on for a little bit, but he talks about how he was a kid at a barbecue with his uncle, and they were using fireworks, and said that, oh man, this firework kind of looks like an alien ship, like something in the sky kind of looked crazy. And his uncle immediately, who's a sober guy who's never talked about it, immediately got real serious and said the following thing. All right, this is what the guy said. This is just fun. This is a tangential, anecdotal story, but I think it adds to it. So this is a video about a guy claiming things in Antarctica are crazy. And now this is his uncle who said, I knew Dad said something about him doing dangerous work in Antarctica in World War II, but this really freaked me out as he didn't drink and was not the type to come out with shit like this. And the most scary part was when he said at the end, the bases were there for thousands of years under our noses and were primitive to see. Fascinating. So this is anecdotal evidence that, someone else was down there in Antarctica and came across this stuff.
It's like a previous civilization?
I don't know. Thousands of years. So is it alien? Is it a previous civilization? Here's the deal. I'm going to get to another story for a second, but one thing that's interesting about this is, okay, what's the connection here? It's an old-ass infrastructure from Atlantis, right? Mm-hmm. That multiple things could be happening. Could be, right? Mm-hmm. Aliens could be in it. ET could be there using it as bases after the fact. So it might have been human and then adopted by aliens, and then we found the aliens there and all got together. So it's confusing. It's not as easy as like it's an alien base.
Big party.
It's old human base, old human infrastructure with aliens and us possibly working together. But anyways, let me move on to the next story. It's awesome. This is the missing scientist story. I call this the petrified scientist, a.k.a. The Thing. So this reminds me of the movie The Thing. Okay, this is cool. So
just to briefly jump in, this Antarctica thing, like it was a storyline within the whole X-Files mythology.
Yeah,
and we know like Chris Carter, who created the X-Files. There's all this talk about him being connected to intelligence services and stuff.
Yeah,
and it was what did you just mention? The Thing was another Antarctic.
Yeah, I love the movie The Thing. So The Thing is one of my top 20 favorite movies of all time.
Yeah.
The first one. I like the second one that was done recently, but the one in the 80s always defined like my mythos.
Well, there's one before that too, actually.
Oh, really?
Black and white one, yeah.
Yeah, there's one before that too,
late 60s?
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. Oh, yeah, you're right. No, you're right. Yeah,
but
I know
it's like,
that.
yeah, it is like, it is one of those places that we haven't really officially like explored very much.
It's like the Amazon.
You're not allowed to fly over it. There's all these restrictions about going there.
Yeah, like why?
So I think it just fascinates us in general. But go on, yeah.
All right, so this is a cool story that ends interestingly. Okay, so Brian S.
BS.
BS. I was at a place called McBurdy, and they flew a bunch of scientists out with equipment to a location called Marine Byrd 1. It's an area. There's like structures there. There's a place to live. And they brought their equipment out there. So they drop them off. They wheel their stuff out and they leave. Every day, that station has to check in with another station. So every 24 hours, they check in to make sure everything's okay because of extreme weather. And it's obviously in Antarctica. It's hard to live there.
Right.
About a week into it, they stop responding. 3 days go by. They're like, all right, Brian, your crew is going to go out there and see what's going on. So Brian and his crew flew out there. They landed. And they look around. All the snowmobiles are there, but nobody's there. Everything's there. The equipment, the snowmobiles, everything they dropped off. It's not like the movie Aliens where there's like, a half-eaten donut and like a cigarette still like, somehow like
like it just happened.
Yeah.
Something just came. Yeah.
But clearly people were there, but there's no one there. And everything's there. So it's not like they left and walked off.
Yeah.
So they just left and reported no one's there. I don't know what's going on. About a week goes by. Brian gets a call again. Apparently the scientists are there or they're back. And they're requesting immediate evac. Brian gets the crew. They get on the plane. They immediately go there. They land. As they're flying in, they notice that the scientists are 100% ready to go. They're out in the ice already. All their gear, all the equipment, everything. Let's go. They land the plane. The scientists don't even say anything. They all run on the plane and sit down immediately while the crew, because these crews in these big planes, there's multiple people and they have to do shit. And they have to bring in the equipment. They bring in the equipment. And they start trying to talk to the scientists as they take off. No one will say anything. They won't even talk to them. Not even like, I can't say anything. I don't know what happened. I'm not allowed to talk. Just pure terror.
Silent.
Like PTSD, shock, can't talk. Something crazy went down.
Whoa.
They won't talk to them. So the whole flight, they won't talk. They tried multiple times. These people will not talk to them. They land the plane. Interestingly enough, the people won't get off the plane at first. They're just such shock that they don't even know what to do. So they had to literally be like, okay, it's time for you to get off. You get off now. The equipment was immediately taken in quarantine, which never happens there, which is bizarre. And they didn't know what that meant. And then one plane took the equipment off and went to New Zealand, where is it like with one of those drop-off points?
Yeah, it's one of the close.
And this plane only had that equipment on it, which never happens because up there you have to be
expensive.
Yes, you have to be super efficient up there. Mm-hmm. So they would never do that. Really, really weird. There's a rumor that the equipment eventually landed at Wright-Patt Air Force Base, which is famous for taking on alien and fringe and crazy technology.
Right.
So there's no good ending to the story. There's not like a rumor that says they were working with aliens or they got abducted or the tech they were working on ended up interacting with the aliens, didn't know it. There's nothing really to say more about